Mr. Frank Gaffney, as president of the Center for Security Policy and author of War Footing, Frank Gaffney has a well-deserved reputation for being one of our most far-seeing national security experts and activists. He is highly respected and has often served as a witness before Congress on national security issues. Frank Gaffney has been in the forefront of those leading the fight to raise public awareness of the EMP threat and to implement the EMP Commission recommendations to protect the United States.
We are confronting enemies who understand our vulnerability to electromagnetic pulse attack. This includes people we have no reason to believe we will be able to deter. Therefore, increasing dramatically, I believe, the likelihood we will face one or more of these enemies who wish, as the president of the Islamic Republic of Iran repeatedly says, to bring about a world without America. How better to do it than this? And as David Trachtenberg, among others, have noted, it's now entirely possible, as the EMP Commission has thoughtfully developed, for a relatively short-range missile, of which there are thousands around the world, to be brought close to our shores and launched off of a ship and give rise to this kind of cataclysmic EMP, high-altitude EMP attack. And we may not even know who did it, let alone be able to deter them from doing so. Discount, if you will, these enemies, the guys who want to bring about a world without America, and say so. The natural occurring phenomenon is coming. We disregard it, not only at our extreme peril, but at the risk of being held properly accountable by future generations, smaller though they will be, for having failed to take the steps that we could have, knowing what we know, to prevent this horror from occurring through one means or another. Now, that's all the bad news, folks. The good news, the decidedly good news, in fact, the incredibly exciting news, is that the strategic context in which we find ourselves is unique, in my experience, fooling around with this stuff on and off for 30 years. We not only now have a very clear picture of what the problem is, we know the results of failing to address it will be, not my words, the Commission's words, catastrophic. We know that there are now at least a few critically placed individuals in leadership positions in our Congress. Chris Beck at the staff level representing Benny Thompson, the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee in the House, Yvette Clarke, the chairman of the Subcommittee on Emerging Threats, Joe Lieberman, the chairman of the counterpart Senate Committee. Now, I believe, get it and understand that something has to be done about this. It's their duty, and indeed it is. There are apparently even a few folks, at least in the executive branch, who are starting to pay attention to this, if only because they're now being goaded by people on the Hill, and the Commission's reports are starting to get, witness your presence here, some more and more attention. But here's the thing. What makes this unique, and it's been touched on a couple of times, but I want to make a point of it. What makes this situation, this strategic context unique, what makes this meeting so critical is that we've actually got a pot of money that can be applied against solving this problem. And there's at least a modicum of leadership that gets that you got to address that catastrophic problem with the resources. The resources are to be found in the stimulus bill and the money that it has allocated to enhancing, upgrading, overhauling the grid. With that money comes an absolute responsibility to ensure that we're not simply, as was said earlier, not simply building in the same vulnerability to the new, smarter, spiffed up grid, we're actually making it a dumber grid because it will be even more catastrophically vulnerable to this problem. So we are in the situation, folks, where with some focused effort on the part of people like us, and by that I mean the people, as Newt Gingrich said, that you not only exemplify, but that you're related to, that you work with, that are in your neighborhood. Those folks, in addition, now have an opportunity to make it happen, to make that money that has been allocated for a new grid have, at least as part of the program, the planning that says don't do the same stupid things we've been doing to date. Make this smart grid smart. Make it robust against these sorts of phenomena, the E1s and the E3s. Get smart. Take this as the introductory course to the kind of education that not only you need, but, as I say, all of those other folks who are in your circle of influence also need. Now, they're not, any more than I, likely to understand the difference between E1 and E3. But if they just understand what Bronius said is coming when that train gets here, that's enough. Is there anybody in this room who was not terrified by what he described? I certainly was. And we're not talking about this just to frighten people. We're talking about this in the hopes that it can be avoided. And that's why we're all here. So getting smart about it is the first order of business. As Newt said, getting sufficiently smart that you too can be people who are talking about this on talk radio, writing letters to the editor, or are in the blogosphere. And again, if you don't want to hold yourself out as experts, and I don't, at least be clued up enough to tell people where to go for that expertise. And the Commission's got one-stop shopping that's enormously useful. So get smart. Get organized. One of my really important takeaways was from something Kurt Weldon said at the very beginning of the program. If you were here, do you remember he mentioned that he started this fire caucus? And then he mentioned that it was now the largest caucus in the United States House of Representatives. 300-some members. 300-some members is more than enough to get any piece of legislation passed in the House. So how about this as an idea, especially for those first responders and firefighters in the room? How about let's get those fire caucus members on this case? How hard should that be? And with their help and the leadership of chairmen like Benny Thompson and Ms. Clark, I think we can take this money and get the job done. Can we get it done before the train gets here? Maybe in 2013, if it's the storm first? I don't know. But if we now are aware of that storm, why aren't we trying to do that? Do we really have any choice but to try to do that? Think about what you personally can do. Once you're smart, once you're organized, once you're engaged with groups like these, to help save our country and civilization from the train that is surely coming down the tracks. Thank you very much.